Continuing the cover, Typhoon Haiyan, the strongest storm in recorded history as far as the peak winds on a 1-minute wind scale out here. It has already been slamming the east coast of Samar down towards Leyte, and I'm just going to show you some of these images out here, some of the initial images coming out of the region. This is actually via ANC, Tacloban and Leyte there. It almost looks like a tsunami, and this is what we expected, a storm surge, a very dangerous storm surge, up to 7 to 8 meters high, very well possible. You can see this up to about 1 story high. Any low-lying areas right near the coast, any of these really non-reinforced buildings have to have been devastated by this, not just in Tacloban, but also farther off there towards the east, southern portions of Somalia, has had to have brought devastation. And just like we were talking about earlier in our live cast, the winds in the center of the circulation of this storm are the equivalent of what you would find in an EF3 to EF4 tornado, not hurricane, but a tornado out here. It's basically a 100 in diameter wide tornado, I guess, is that what I'm saying here. It's destructive winds. You really can't fathom the winds inside of the center of circulation. And for those of you who are out here in the eastern portions of the Philippines, this is still running at full strength, category 5, a tropical system. Pressure is continuing. Well, pressure is actually starting to rise, so we're going to start to see a slow weakening as this pushes over the Philippines, but it's moving very fast, right around 35 kilometers per hour at this time. That means good and bad news. The good news is that these very severe conditions across portions of Samar and Leyte that they are seeing right now, this significant storm surge, it is going to be easing off quickly into the afternoon hours. The bad news, very slow time for this to weaken out, so we'll quickly rush off there towards the west, and there is going to be a widespread swath. Millions of people affected by this eye wall you can see on the radar imagery across the Philippines, and this is just another one of the looks at the first images coming out of here. This is from someone on Instagram. I shared it on our Facebook page and also on the web page. Just one of these images here of what it looks like inside this eye wall and what people are contending with right now. And if you are outside in an unreinforced building, it really is a deadly storm. As of right now, making this update, Signal Force 4 is in effect for numerous provinces, not just one or two. That's typically what happens here, but most of us eyes under Signal Force 4. Good news, they are, and the warnings have put out on Wednesday and Thursday. Thousands of people evacuated from low-lying areas into higher elevations to these evacuation centers, which are mostly churches, gymnasiums, buildings at higher elevation. They're in Visayas. Now, going through the late morning hours into the early afternoon hours, and this is moving fast. Cebu, you're going to be seeing some rough conditions. Then heading off there towards the west, Iloilo, you're going to be seeing some typhoon strength conditions. The worst is over here. That significant storm surge is off here towards the east, Tacloban right there. That is where I showed you that image of that significant tsunami-like storm surge. But that's all going to be transpiring farther there towards the west throughout the day today. This is by the evening hours. It starts to quickly move off there towards the west, rapidly improving conditions behind it. But yeah, it really is a very serious storm system. We're going to continue to cover this on the webpage, also on Facebook and Twitter throughout the day here. Even in Manila, you're going to be seeing some tropical storm strength winds as well. I've seen that you are in Signal Force 2 at this time, but the worst of it will stay down here farther towards the sea. So with that said, that is all for right now, everybody. Please continue to check back in at the Facebook and Twitter. We're going to continue to post updates throughout the day. Just one more time, strongest storm on record via JTWC on a 1-minute wind scale. Not official via JMA, the RSMC, as far as the pressure. But according to JWC satellite estimates, we do have the strongest typhoon on record. So that is just something to keep in mind. But please stay safe out there, everybody. And let's hope that everybody evacuated out of these storm surge areas and ahead of this very violent and incredibly dangerous typhoon.
As the clean-up operation gets underway, footage has been released of the moment Typhoon Haiyan roared into Samar Island in the Philippines. The video, filmed by charity worker Nixon Gensis, shows the storm surge completely wash away a house, while he, along with 5 others, took refuge on the top floor of a building. In another instance, an area of barren land can be seen being inundated with water in less than 30 seconds, while 170-mile-an-hour winds bore down on trees and houses. While much of the boarding house he was in was flooded and destroyed, Gensis survived the onslaught and was delivering aid to survivors after the winds subsided. The Philippines faces an enormous rebuilding task from the typhoon, which has so far killed nearly 4,000 people and displaced around 4 million.
Many parts of the archipelago nation were cut off from electricity and communications Friday as Typhoon Haiyan made landfall in the islands of Leyte and Samar. The storm, known in the Philippines as Yolanda, had wind gusts of 350 kilometers per hour as it lashed the islands. Some forecasters say this makes it the strongest recorded typhoon ever to make landfall. Officials say more than 700,000 people in 29 provinces have been evacuated.
The winds and rains were very strong. That's why we decided to leave our house.
Many parts of the hardest hit areas Friday were unreachable, and the extent of the damage was not known. Philippines President Benigno Aquino went on nationwide television to warn residents to stay out of harm's way and offer words of encouragement.
As always, no storm can bring a united Filipino people to its knees. It is my hope that we all stay safe in the coming days.
Philippine meteorologists warn Haiyan could be more dangerous than last year's Typhoon Bofa, which killed at least 1,100 people on the southern island of Mindanao. Bofa was the world's most powerful storm of 2012. The Philippines is vulnerable to severe flooding caused by heavy rains and tsunamis. It is hit by about 20 tropical cyclones each year. Jeff Custer, VOA News.
Relief efforts are underway, and the picture is becoming clearer of just how deadly Typhoon Haiyan has been in the Philippines. The typhoon slammed into 6 central Philippine islands Friday, wiping away homes and buildings, cutting off power and creating misery for a growing number of people.
We have so many dead people.
Weather officials said the typhoon had sustained winds of nearly 150 miles an hour, with gusts considerably higher than that. The country's president gave no figure on casualties, but said the number is rising. And he said the government's priority is to restore power in isolated areas to allow for the delivery of relief and medical assistance. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says the U.S. stands ready to help, a message echoed by the president of the European Commission. Residents, meanwhile, in Vietnam are now bracing for Haiyan's wrath. It's forecast to hit the country's central coast Sunday afternoon. Carlotta Bradley, The Associated.
The Red Cross says 1,000 are feared dead in one city alone, and the death toll in the Philippines is only expected to rise as rescue workers enter the worst-hit areas. Our Natasha Fatah is tracking this story. She joins us from the newsroom. Natasha, what are people in the Philippines dealing with today?
Well, Christine, have a look at this. If we can take this full frame, this is what the people of Philippines, particularly in the central part of the country, are dealing with. These are images from the city of Tacloban, which has been the worst hit during the typhoon. As you can see, homes have been completely flattened, and these are places where people were just having their dinners last night, where they were with their families. All of these roofs just completely flattened to the ground. It gives you a sense of the devastation. Here's another road in Tacloban, and you can see that a massive tree has been uprooted right from the ground. That's because of those powerful wind gusts. Again, here you can see a car has been turned upside down in the middle of the street. There's a couple of people here and here trying to recover what they can from the scene. And then we're seeing a lot of images like this of people gathering what they can now that the typhoon has moved on, collecting what few objects they have and trying to make sense of the situation. But we know tens of thousands of people are now homeless in that area. This is another common scene that we've been hearing about from witnesses. People just sort of bobbing in the water because of the extreme amount of flooding as well as the wind gusts. So they're trying to get rescued from the water. This is an image of that, but there are reports of countless bodies just sort of floating around in that area. It's a devastating scene. There are a number of other issues. It's in the middle of the night right now, so there's no electricity there. Telecommunications that are almost all but gone, and the airport isn't fully functional. operational at this point, so it's difficult to get people in and out of this area. We'll have a better sense of what the numbers will be like, what the damage will be like in a few hours when daylight hits. But I can tell you that when the Interior Minister of Philippines arrived in Tacloban today, he said that this scene was absolutely devastating. He said it was horrific, and he said this has been a great human tragedy, Christine.
Wow. And remind us, Natasha, where is the storm heading next?
Well, it's moving quickly westwards towards Vietnam, which has already been hit a couple of times earlier this season by 2 other typhoons. People there are in the midst of preparing, as you can see, reinforcing their homes, their schools, their buildings. The Prime Minister has all but declared this a state of an emergency. He's asking the military to help and provide relief wherever they can. But people in Vietnam are just in the midst of recovering from those other 2 typhoons that they were hit with. So they're looking at images like these from the Philippines, and they're very concerned that by this time tomorrow, this is what parts of Vietnam are also going to look like.
Yeah, it must be a very tense time. Natasha, thanks for the latest.
Ngayon dahil inabot din yun ng tubig. So, check up pa natin kung magiging naghanap po magiging operation.